Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to the Plant Spot. So today we're going to navigate away from aeroids and epiphytes and things like that. We're going to talk a little bit about succulents and specifically Crassula. I think I said that right. We'll put that down we'll put the title down at the bottom. So if you like this type of content, stick around. All right, guys, as I mentioned in the intro, today we're going to talk about succulents and then specifically Crassula plants. Now, the one that I'm going to focus on mainly is this one right here, lovingly referred to as Shrek ears. It's really a golem jade, and the golem jade is a cultivar of what we commonly see as the jade plant. Now, I decided to bring these guys out because when I was younger, these were the type of plants that I liked, but I loved them so much that I killed them. So these plants are great for people that want to be hands off, have a little bit of greenery in their home, but not have to worry about constantly having to water them. I find that these plants tend to like to go dry. For me, I don't water them. Well, I water them maybe once every 2 to 3 weeks. And when I water them thoroughly. But let's talk a little bit about, I've got some cheat sheet notes down here, some general care and general things about both plants. And these two are very similar as far as their care is concerned. So I know they're native to South Africa. If you've ever grown succulents, you know that they enjoy sunny spots, bright, that direct sun. They thrive in those conditions. I wish that in our home we had a spot that was like south facing so that they could get that natural light, because in that bright sun, they do some pretty cool things. Like I know for a fact that this particular plant, when it gets that bright sun, it stresses just like a Hoya would. You get those pretty oranges and reds on the edges. My plant doesn't do that because it lives under artificial light. It does not get that bright direct sun, and I don't have any place in the house to put it to do that. When you have them growing in conditions that are like a low light or a moderate light, what you'll find is that they stretch. So they grow very leggy, just like any other plant that's not getting sufficient light. So that's one of the things, that's a pro tip. If you've got a bright sunny spot, a succulent would do really, really well there. As far as the soil, this one has never been repotted. This one I did repot out of a little 2-inch planter that it came in. And what I did was I used the regular cactus soil mix you can get in a bag, but I amended that with a very little bit of orchid bark, just a tiny bit, and some perlite. And the reason that I did that was that I wanted to be able to water them thoroughly, let that water come out and make sure that, they weren't staying too wet, because that's the problem that most people have with succulents. Either they water too often and they cause root rot and the leaves start to fall off, or they don't water enough. So, for me, that was one of the things that I had to get used to, not doting over them. These plants don't need that constant doting. These are kind of the plants that you can have and water them once a month and they'll do just fine as long as they're getting all of the other conditions that make them happy. We talked about water. Let's see, temperature and humidity. So in my experience, the way I'm growing them, they're really not getting any additional humidity, and I don't think that they necessarily need that. But what they do need is, you know, they just like any other plant, they don't like that fluctuation in the temperature. If you look online, they'll tell you between 55 and 80 degrees. I think that if you're comfortable in your home, these plants will do just fine. They don't need anything extra. Fertilization. Now, they'll tell you that these plants, because they're slow growing, we shouldn't fertilize them, you know, consistently. I tend to fertilize with every watering. You guys know that I like to use a very diluted mixture of fertilizer for my plants. These particular plants, I've tried Miracle Grow. Now, you know I'm not a fan of Miracle Grow, but they do sell this cactus formulated fertilizer, which, you know, in my experience, I've used a couple of times. It comes in a little like pump bottle, and you can pump a little bit in your plant and then water it in. That seems to work fine. Because they only get watered about once every 3 weeks to a month, I find that I'm not over fertilizing. I think all plants need to be fed, regardless of how slow they're growing. If they're growing, you should be fertilizing. At least that's my opinion. Now, propagation. Propagation with these plants can be really cool because you could literally propagate from a healthy leaf. You know, you could sit that on top of soil and keep it moist, and you'll notice that it'll start to put out little roots, and it'll dig into that soil, and then it'll push out a little baby. It's a very cool experience to see. I've also seen where some people, they take bottles and they open little holes, and they put they put the leaves in there, and they put a little bit of water at the bottom, and you'll also see the roots start, that humidity from the water, it helps the roots to form. You can also propagate from a stem cutting. So you could literally cut a stem right around, let's say, let me see. I think you guys can see me from here. You could cut the stem right about here, for instance. You would remove 2 of the leaves, let it callus over, and then you can pop that in some dirt, you know, and moist dirt, and put it in a place where it's not going to get direct sun, and it should grow from that as well. That I have tried with another jade plant that I have upstairs, and it's worked out really well. Now, let's talk about the pest. So, with all plants, you know, it's crazy to me how you can get pests in the house, especially when you haven't introduced a new plant. But these plants are susceptible to the same pests that we see with all of our plants. The aphids, the mealybugs, the scale, spider mites, all of that stuff. For me, I think being preventative is the best measure. You know, cleaning your plants, wiping the leaves, spraying them every once in a while. That's what's going to help you to minimize the impact of pests on your plants. So that's just my advice for that. Prevention is key. The one thing that I didn't know about these plants is that they actually bloom. Now, who would have thought? I read online that these plants, as they mature, you know, of course, they have to mature like any other plant. They actually put out these little white, they could be white or pink flowers. I've never seen it, and I didn't really research to find a picture of it online, but they bloom, and I think that's really cool. Now, let's talk about some of the problems we face with these type of plants. And I think this is succulents in general. I've seen people talk about, you know, how their leaves are going yellow or black or brown. Early on with this particular plant, when she was still much younger, I made a common mistake, right? So when I watered her, I got one of her leaves wet. And what I noticed was that I started getting some black around the inside close to the stem, and I became concerned. And the reason that happened was that my leaves got wet. There was no airflow, and that water sat there, and basically it was rotting that area. I ended up having to cut that section of the plant off. So if you see yellow, black, brown leaves on your succulents, chances are you might be overwatering them, and that can lead to rot. The best thing to do when that happens is to chop off any area that you see might be mushy or soft and stop watering. Let it dry out for you. If you see droopy leaves, like for instance, this one actually needs water. Now she's not totally droopy, but you can see how the leaves are curling right here. That little curl and that leaf right there is telling me that I need to water her. And she's, I don't know if the camera, let me see, let me get close to me. You hear that? It's just, she's dry, she's crunchy. So at this point, or at this time, this plant needs water. And she sits in a little tray. These plants live in my office on a shelf that I have, and I have grow lights that sit right above them. So like the grow lights are like this, right on top of them, because obviously they're full sun. So getting close to that light is not going to burn them. And they're the inexpensive ones, those spider lights that we can get on Amazon that are inexpensive. They don't do the best job of providing a whole lot of light, but they get sufficient light where they're still growing and for the most part happy. When I water her till I see water come out the bottom, and she sits in the tray, and I will let her sit in that tray with the water at the bottom until she's soaked up all of it. So, you know, we have the perception that because they're succulents, we should just water them, and once the water comes out, put them someplace else. I find that because we only water them once every 2, 3, 4 weeks, that you should water thoroughly, let the water come out, and let it sit in the water just a little bit. Typically for me, when I do that, and this is with all of my succulents, this Gollum included, I let them sit in that water, and I'll come back and check in about an hour or so. If the water is still there, then I know that they've had sufficient, and I'll just dump that out. I don't let them sit in the water overnight, but I do let them sit in that water for about an hour or so to make sure that they've soaked up as much as they need. And for me, that seems to be working. Now, I want to talk about one more thing. I don't know if my husband can zoom in, and I'll try to tip this one over a little bit so you could see. I don't know if you can see those little white dots on here. This one has it, and so does the other one. Now, if you're a new plant parent, and I'll bring this one closer too so you could see all the little white specks on the leaves. So if you're a new plant parent and you see this, you might freak out and think, oh my God, I've got bugs on my plants. Chillax, not bugs. This, it took me a minute to realize what this was. This is from the salts in our water, the chemicals in our water. So our water, you know, we have salts, we have chemicals, we have all of those things. These particular plants, when you water with tap water, and you guys know that I'm not one to buy the distilled and all of that stuff. They excrete the salts through, I like to call them pores, but they're not, and I don't know the technical name, but they excrete the salts through their leaves. And these white spots that you see on here are the salts that they're, you know, pushing out of their system. Now, one thing we could do to help them is to water with distilled. I'm not saying always water with distilled because that can get expensive. And, you know, nowadays we're all trying to save a little bit of money here and there. But we could flush them every once in a while with some distilled water. Now, I don't buy distilled. I have a Brita pitcher that I fill with water, and I'll water them with that maybe once every couple of months to help flush out some of those salts. But I did want to point that out, because if you have one of these and you see those white spots, the first thing we're going to think about is, oh my God, I've got pest. No, you don't. What you have is your plant trying to get rid of the salts that are in the water. Toxicity. I think I said that right. they are toxic. Not to the touch, not the sap. If ingested, they are toxic. They can cause diarrhea, vomiting, things of that nature. So if you've got little cats or pets or, children that like to pull the leaves and put things in their mouths, you might want to consider that if you're purchasing one of those. So that's all I have for you on the Crassula or the jade plant. So this is the jade oval, and this is a cultivar of this plant, and it's a golem, and they refer to it as a Shrek's ears. I think, in my humble opinion, that these plants are perfect for a novice. If you travel, if you have a job that takes you out of the home, if you don't really have time to baby a plant, these make the perfect addition to your collection. You can grow these, not have to worry about watering as often. And if you've got a sunny spot, they're going to thrive for you. So it's one to consider. I think they're pretty. They're simple. They're different. This one for sure is very different. And they can do things just like the other plants. They can blush, they change colors, they flower. I mean, it's all wrapped up in a bundle without having to do a whole lot to keep them happy. So that's my little 2 cents today for you on the jade plants. I hope you enjoyed this content. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave me a comment. Guys, thank you. Talk to you real soon. Bye.